We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I know it hasn't been easy talking about your experiences. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't want leave. You deport me? Boss say I speak with officer, I go.
I understand those are your concerns. Look, we're not immigration officers, but we'll make sure you can talk to someone who can answer those questions for you.
Okay. Okay, yes, I understand. Sure, okay. I will call you back. Thank you for the follow-up. Bye-bye. Hey, Sarge, do you have a sec?
Yeah, sure. What's up?
Do you remember that trafficking case from 7 months ago?
Yeah.
I just got off the phone with an immigration lawyer. She wants me to sign some forms so that her client, the victim, can apply for a visa. I am all for signing the forms under the right circumstances, but I'm not going to give citizenship to somebody without knowing what's been going on the past 7 months. I mean, what if she goes out and commits a crime after I sign the forms?
Wait, slow down and let's take a look at the form. Do you have a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, today we're talking about immigration laws for victims of crime. We're focusing on human trafficking. We have a panel of experts today from federal law enforcement and state and local law enforcement. Thanks for being here. Okay, in the video that we just saw, there was a scenario. What do police officers need to know before they go into that room? What are they trying to learn, and what are they trying to offer the victims to get the best support and the best help for these people?
One of the great things that's demonstrated in the video that captures the law enforcement interview is that you see the officers interviewing the victim in a neutral location at a police department or in an office setting or in a conference room setting, and not in the place of exploitation. I think a lot of times in the eagerness to get as much information as early as possible, there can be a tendency to want to talk to victims and conduct investigative interviews at the place where those victims are first identified or first rescued. But what we need to remember is that those victims have been victimized.
What kind of immigration relief may be available for somebody who's undocumented and they're a victim of crime?
If a victim is identified, there's 3 basic forms of relief that they can request or file for in order to assist law enforcement in that investigation or prosecution that's taking place. One of them would be continued presence, another is the T visa, and the other is the U visa. One thing that DHS would like to stress is with these T and U law enforcement certifications, so the forms that Mike and local law enforcement, police departments, district attorneys' offices, these forms that they'll be signing for these victims are just telling USCIS, so they're telling the Department of Homeland Security that this person was a victim of a crime, they've got knowledge of the crime, and they're cooperating in the investigation or prosecution. That's what they're telling us with these forms. Only USCIS, under the Department of Homeland Security, can give out the T visa or the U visa. So just by signing that certification, that does not automatically grant that visa to this victim. USCIS will go through a full background check. We'll be doing the fingerprints, name and date of birth check. We'll be going through all the immigration records to make sure that this person is indeed eligible for that visa. So the one thing we do want to stress to law enforcement is just by signing that certification, showing that this person was cooperating in your investigation or prosecution does not automatically grant an immigration benefit. That's our responsibility, and we'll handle that on our end.
Right, and the leader of the local or state law enforcement agencies, such as the chief or the sheriff, they're allowed to sign that certification form, or what happens in most of these cases is they designate one of their officers who is in a supervisory capacity to be the certifying official for that agency. And that could be one person, that could be several people in the larger agencies, and that's the person who would sign that. And yeah, we see that there is a lot of confusion around the country when speaking to our law enforcement counterparts that what our role is and what we're actually doing when we sign the certification form. We're the first step. There's all kinds of steps that have to happen after we sign the certification form.
Okay, now what if this victim commits a crime during this time? Is the officer liable?
No, that's a question that we hear a lot. We are not liable. What we are doing in the law enforcement role, local law enforcement role, is certifying this person was a victim of one of those qualifying criminal activities. They were helpful in the detection, the investigation, or the prosecution of that crime, and they have knowledge about the crime that was committed against them. So those are the 3 things we're really focusing on. We sign that certification, and it's only USCIS that has the responsibility to actually grant that relief.
Anybody from ICE, USCIS, we do not have the authority to tell the law enforcement agency, the state or local agency, when or whether or not they will sign that certification. That will be at the discretion of the local law enforcement agency that's investigating or prosecuting that case.
But for local law enforcement, they just really need to start by focusing on the crime.
It really shows how important it is for us to develop those collaborative relationships with our local federal law enforcement counterparts. And we all need to identify who those people are. And regardless of where you live in the country, there is somebody that's out there that covers your jurisdiction that you can identify that you could refer that person to in that case too.
Okay, Mike, let's talk about teamwork, because it's so important with local law enforcement that they start the process and that it continues. You need the police on the front lines getting this going. Why is that so important to be working together?
We are out there. State and local law enforcement officers are out there, boots in the field. We're in the best position to identify these cases. And if we're not out there identifying these cases for what they are and working together with our federal law enforcement counterparts, they're not going to have the information they need to do the job that they need to do. So when we work together and we're keeping them in mind when we're out there doing our job, it all comes together and we're able to get good things done.
Okay, well, this has to be very beneficial, having the immigration relief available when you're trying to prosecute a crime.
Traditionally, we have a hard time identifying these victims. The victims, for a lot of really, really good reasons and valid reasons, don't come forward out of the fear, out of the intimidation that's being used to control them. And with relief like this, we're able to actually get eyes on some of the more violent criminals that are out there in our communities. We're not talking about people who commit shoplifting and larceny cases. We're talking about some of the more violent crimes that can be committed in this country. And when we now have victims who feel comfortable reaching out to us and giving us information that helps us investigate these crimes, we can get those criminals off the street. And at the same time, like, we all share the common goal of keeping victims safe and keeping our community safe. And it all goes full circle together. Looking
back at everything that we've discussed today, what do you think is the most important thing for the officers to take with them from this session?
That immigration is important to us. It's important for us to understand what is out there to help us identify the victims that are out there in our communities. We're not being asked to do a whole lot of work. We're being asked to spend a little bit of time determining whether someone qualifies and signing a certification form, and the benefit that you get from that definitely outweighs the small amount of work that you have to put into putting one of these things in place and passing it over to our counterparts that do that work.
I think it's also helpful for investigators to bear in mind the little and big things that they can do to contribute to a victim's level of comfort with an investigative interview. And so one of those things is the timing of the interview. If you have recently identified and rescued a victim of trafficking who has been in an exploitation situation and has not slept for 2 days and is not really sure when their last meal was, it may be helpful to wait to conduct your first detailed and lengthy investigative interview until you know that person is in a place where they feel more rested and more stable and able to go forward.
All right, thank you so much for all the information that you shared today. And for the officers who are watching, if you have any more questions, if you need to know about more resources, you can go to the Department of Homeland Security's Blue Campaign.